The rot reached me before anything else did, sweat and old straw, and something underneath it I had no name for. Despair, maybe. Fear gone so thick in the air you could taste it on your teeth. I had no business in that place. The bone market crouched at the southern lip of the city, where the paved streets gave up and dissolved into churned mud, and the crown's law thinned out to nothing but rumor. Everything the rest of the city refused to say aloud got traded there. Stolen relics, forbidden charms, breathing things that should never have been for sale. I would not have gone within a mile of it, except a collapsed retaining wall had swallowed my usual way home. A short detour, the watchman promised. Only a small one. And that small one carried me straight along the market's edge, where I kept my eyes on my own worn boots and drew my patched cloak tight and tried to make myself into nothing at all. I almost got through. I nearly reached the far side untouched, and then a sound stopped me, and that sound rewrote the whole shape of my life. Chapter 1. It was a roar, deep, ragged, packed with fury and agony in the same breath. It sliced clean through the market's ugly din and rooted me to the spot mid-stride. No man made that sound. It belonged to something wild, something old. It set my ribs humming and made my heart trip over itself. My feet moved before my sense could argue them still. Against everything reasonable, I turned toward it and began to push through the press of bodies. Traders bawled their wares. Buyers haggled over the worth of living creatures, with the flat faces of people bargaining for turnips. Not one of them marked me. I was only another threadbare girl in a gray dress, a seamstress with dye-stained fingers, invisible in a world that ran on gold and cruelty. Then the crowd split around a great rusted cage bolted to a cart, and I saw him. A wolf, but no wolf that had ever walked the ordinary world. He was enormous, bigger than any beast I had ever laid eyes on, his shoulders rising to a grown man's chest even folded down as he was into a cage built far too small for him. His coat was the black of a starless midnight, clotted here and there with dried blood and filth. Wounds mapped every inch of him, fresh lash marks, deep gashes. Brands seared into his hide like cruel letters in a language of pain. But it was the eyes that seized me and would not let go. They burned a gold that had no place in an overcast afternoon, and they held nothing of the animal in them. There was a mind behind them. There was rage, and there was pride, and there was a grief so deep and so bottomless it emptied the breath straight out of my lungs. A chain thick as my wrist bound his neck to the cage floor, leaving him barely slack enough to lift his head. An iron muzzle clamped his jaws so tightly I could see the metal biting into flesh, and blood dripped slow from his mouth to pool black beneath him. My stomach clenched into a fist. "Ladies and gentlemen." The auctioneer's oily voice yanked me back into my own body. He was a soft, heavy man with a corpse's dead eyes and a smile that never reached them, and he rapped his stick against the bars to gather the crowd. "We arrive now at today's crown jewel, a creature of true magnificence." The stick cracked against iron. The wolf did not so much as blink. He simply stared through the man as though he were made of smoke. "This killer," the auctioneer went on, dripping false delight, "was run down in the Blackthorn Wood. It took 9 men to break him. 4 of them are in the ground." The crowd stirred, hungry. "Flawless for the pits. Picture this beast opening your rivals from throat to belly. We open the bidding at 100 gold. 100 gold. More than I could earn in 5 hard years. 120, a voice called, a wine merchant by his fat rings. 150, snapped another. I should have walked. This was not my world. I had no gold. I barely had rent and a heel of bread most weeks. And then the wolf shifted. His great head turned, and his eyes found mine. The whole shrieking market blurred and fell away. In that one held moment I saw everything. The pride of something high and mighty, broken and dragged through mud. The loneliness of a soul that had run entirely out of hope. And, worst of all, I saw myself in him, trapped, alone, waiting year after grinding year for a single person to look at me and see something more than a tool, an object, a thing to be used and set aside. My hand slid into my pocket. The little leather purse there felt suddenly heavy as a stone. It held everything I owned. 10 years of scraping, every copper hoarded, every rare silver hidden in the hem of my skirt. It was meant to buy me out. A scrap of cottage far past the city walls, away from the reeking lanes and the greedy eyes, a place where at long last I might belong to no one but myself. 200, the merchant boomed. 250, his rival fired back. The wolf did not look away from me. His gaze reached in like a hand closing around my heart, and it asked me one silent question. Will you turn away, like all the rest of them? My fingers tightened on the purse. I could not turn away. 300. My voice came out quiet, but in the sudden hush that dropped over the stall, every soul heard it. Heads swung toward me. The auctioneer's brows climbed. The merchant threw back his head and laughed. Did the little sparrow just bid? He jeered. Show your coin, girl, or clear off. Heat scalded up my neck, but I made myself stand straight. With hands that would not stop shaking, I upended the purse into my palm. Gold. Not much of it, but enough. Enough to stand for the last 10 years of my life, poured out into my own cupped hand. The auctioneer stepped down and pinched a coin, bid it, turned it in the light. He gave a slow, astonished nod. 300 gold from the young lady. Any advance on 300? The merchant looked me up and down and then shrugged. Not for a half-dead cur. Let the sparrow keep it. The others were already drifting off toward the next cruelty. Sold. The stick cracked the bars. To the girl in gray. I stood frozen, the empty purse still clutched in my fist, unable to believe what I had just done. What had I done? Chapter 2. The auctioneer waved me forward. Come along, little one. Your prize is waiting. On legs that had gone to water, I crept toward the cage. The wolf had never once broken his stare, and up close he was more enormous and more terrible still. His teeth, showing even behind the muzzle, ran long as carving knives. His claws scraped the metal as he shifted. Here. A heavy key pressed into my hand. For the cage, and this small one's for the chain. Leave the muzzle on if you've any wit, unless you fancy losing your head. He barked a laugh at his own joke. Want a man to haul it for you? 10 silver. I shook my head. I had no silver. I had nothing at all now. Suit yourself. He turned to the next cage and forgot me entirely. Alone, I knelt slowly before the bars. The wolf growled, a low warning that rolled through my bones. I know, I whispered. I know you're frightened. So am I. I put out my hand, not to touch him, only to show it empty. No whip. Yeah, no blade. I swear to you, and my voice cracked on it, I won't hurt you. I only want to help. Please, trust me. He held my gaze for so long I was sure he would look through me and dismiss me like everyone always had. Then, so slightly I nearly missed it, he lowered his head. Barely a hair's breadth. But it was enough. Fingers trembling, I fit the key into the lock. Chapter 3. I will carry that walk home to my grave. Dusk had already settled by the time I began dragging the heavy cart through the streets. My arms screamed, my shoulders knotted, and I had to stop again and again just to drag air into my chest. The wolf was heavy, not only his weight, but the sheer press of his presence. Everywhere we passed, people froze. Children fled behind their mothers' skirts. Men reached for their belt knives. An old woman spat in the mud at my feet and hissed something about demons and witchery. "That's a monster!" a shopkeeper bellowed, slamming his shutters. "Why do you drag such a thing through our streets?" I let it all wash over me and past me, one foot, then the next. That was the whole of my world. My room sat at the very top of a narrow, sagging building on the edge of the crafter's quarter, a steep, cramped stair and no way on earth to carry a cart up it. I stared at the cage. The wolf stared back. "I have to let you out," I breathed, my heart slamming so hard I was sure he could hear it. "But if you run, if you turn on me, then all of this was for nothing." He made no sound. Those golden eyes gave away nothing at all. My hand shook so badly I dropped the small key twice before it caught the lock. The metal clicked. The door swung wide. The wolf did not move. "Come," I whispered, backing off slowly, gesturing toward the doorway a few paces off. "Please." For a long, breathless moment, nothing. Then, careful as a thing testing thin ice, he moved. He was so large he had to fold himself nearly flat to spill out of the cage, and when he rose to his full height outside it, my breath left me clean. His shoulder reached my chest. Every muscle beneath the torn fur was carved for killing. The chain still rattled at his neck, and I watched him sway beneath the drag of its weight. He looked toward the open street. On those long legs he could have been gone in 3 strides, and nothing living could have stopped him. He didn't run. He turned back to me instead, and once more our eyes met, and in his there lived a question, a test. "Up the stairs," I said, pointing. "My room, it isn't much, but it's safe." He came. Not fast, not fierce. He limped, dragging his left hind leg, and fresh blood welled dark through the fur, and every step plainly cost him. Yet he made no sound at all. Pride, I understood. Even ruined, he refused to show how deep the hurt ran. The stair was so tight, he had to lie nearly on his belly to climb it. I went ahead with a stub of candle, holding my breath at every groan of the old boards, half certain he'd turn on me in the dark. He only followed, tread by tread, until we reached my door. Chapter 4. My chamber was tiny, a narrow cot, a table with one bad leg, a hearth that gave more smoke than heat, a window that let the night's cold whistle straight through. It had barely held me. Now I shared it with a creature the size of half a horse. "Welcome," I murmured, wishing with my whole chest I had anything better to offer. He stepped in. His eyes swept every corner, checking each shadow for a threat, before he sank to the floorboards with a heavy sigh, the chain clattering loud on the wood. I shut the door and sagged against it, my whole body shuddering with spent fear and exhaustion. The wolf watched me, waiting. "The muzzle," I said quietly. "I have to take it off. You can't breathe, not properly." He growled, louder this time, the warning plain. "I know." I lifted both hands. "I know you hate anyone near your face. But please, let me help you." I crossed to him a handspan at a time. He could snap at any breath, muzzle or no muzzle. His claws alone could open me from shoulder to hip. But he held still. When I knelt, I could hear him breathing, fast and shallow and pained. The iron had cut deep grooves into his snout, and blood and worse had crusted in the raw furrows. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, blinking hard against the sting behind my eyes. My fingers found the buckle at the back of his skull and brushed his fur, coarse, matted, and beneath it warm. Alive. He went rigid, every muscle locked. "I won't hurt you," I said again, low and steady, over and over like a prayer stitched into the dark. The buckle was old and seized with rust. I had to work it, wrench it, fight it, while the great body trembled under my hands, and I could not tell whether it was pain or fury. Then it gave. The muzzle dropped to the boards with a clang. For one heartbeat, nothing. He could have torn my throat out before I drew breath to scream. Instead, he lowered his head and worked his tongue over the raw places on his snout, and then he made a sound. Not a growl, a whimper, small and brief. Relief. And under it, unmistakably, thanks. I swallowed the knot in my throat. "Water. You need water." I fetched my one cracked jug, filled it from the bucket by the window. The water was stale and tasted of tin, but it was all I had. He eyed it as if it hid a snare, then lowered his head and drank, and drank, and drank. I refilled it twice before he stopped. When he lifted his head at last and looked at me, the hatred was gone from his eyes. Only bewilderment remained, as though he could not fathom why I would do any of this. I could barely fathom it myself. "The chain," I told him. "I'll take that off too, but not tonight. I'm too tired, and you're too hurt. Tomorrow." He didn't answer. Of course not. But he dipped his head. I would swear on my life he nodded. I dragged myself onto the cot and dropped, still fully dressed, every bone aching, my own mind shrieking that I was mad, that I was lying down to sleep an arm's length from a monster. Then I heard him move. The chain. Heavy paws on wood. I didn't dare look. And then I felt it. Warmth. Weight. Settling on the floor right beside the cot. Not on it. Beside it. Like a guard set at a door. I cracked one eye. In the thin moonlight I saw him curled tight, snout on his paws, those impossible gold eyes fixed and watchful on the door. Ready. I fell asleep with a smile on my mouth. Chapter 5. The first days were strange ones. I woke stiff and headache dull, wondering why my room had gone so cold. And then I saw him, still curled by the cot, flank rising and falling with sleep. So it hadn't been a dream. I truly had spent every coin I owned on a monster. I eased my legs over the edge of the cot, and his head snapped up at once, eyes hard on me. I froze. "Good morning," I whispered. No answer, naturally, but a soft grumble came from him, something between a warning and a greeting. I knelt at the cold hearth. No wood left. No coin to buy any. No coin at all. Reality landed like a blow to the ribs. I could not go back to the tailor's. Mistress Halloran would never in 100 years believe I'd spent my savings on a wolf. She'd call me mad and turn me out. And he needed food, salves, tending. He was watching me, head tilted, as if reading the whole grim account off my face. "I'll find a way," I said, more to myself than to him. I always find a way. First, his wounds. I gathered the little I had, an old rag, water, a small bottle of cheap herb spirit I'd been saving to drink on some bad night. "I have to clean these," I explained, coming close. "It'll hurt, but if I don't, they'll fester." He growled, but he didn't bite as I knelt, didn't flinch away when I pressed the rag to the deep gash along his flank. His whole body stiffened, a thin whine escaping him, but he stayed. "Brave," I murmured. "You're so brave." The water in the jug went pink, then red. When I reached the brand on his shoulder, that cruel rune I couldn't read, he tensed so hard I feared he'd break apart. "Almost done," I whispered. "Just a little more." And then, as I drew the rag away, his snout moved. Slow, careful. His nose touched the back of my hand. Barely a breath of contact. My heart stumbled. I looked into his eyes, and what I found there filled mine with tears. Not anger, not suspicion. Trust. "Thank you," I whispered, not knowing if he understood a word. "Thank you for letting me try." Chapter 6. After that, something between us had changed for good. He followed me everywhere. When I went down to the courtyard well, he waited at the top of the stairs. When I made to slip out and hunt for work, he set himself across the door until I gave up and stayed. It was as if he had decided I was his, and, I will confess it, I did not mind at all. But hunger did not care about any of that. By the third day, I had nothing left to eat. My stomach cramped and growled, and once I had to sit down hard because the room tilted. He noticed. He always noticed. He rose, limped to the door, and scratched at it. "No," I said weakly. "You can't go out there. They'd kill you." He scratched harder. "Please." I tried to firm my voice, and it broke instead. "Stay. It's safer." He turned and looked at me, and his eyes were full of reproach. "You starve yourself for me and think I don't see it?" "I'll find food tomorrow," I told him. "I promise." A lie, and we both knew it. Night came. I wrapped my thin blanket around me and tried to sleep through the gnawing, my thoughts spinning uselessly. Then warmth pressed along my back. The wolf. He'd climbed onto the cot for the first time and laid his great body against mine, and his heat sank through the worn blanket and into my very bones. A deep rumble started in his chest. Not a growl, a low, soothing purr. I turned carefully. His head lay on my pillow, gold eyes half-lidded. When they met mine, he licked my hand once, and I understood. He was warming me. He was trying, in the only way he had, to comfort me. The tears came before I could stop them, and I pushed my face into his fur, and for the first time in days, I wept not from despair, but from something like gratitude. I was not alone. The next morning I found a dead rat laid neatly outside my door. It took me a moment to understand. He had gone out in the night, how, I still don't know, and hunted. For me. My stomach turned at the thought, but then I saw him sitting there, proud and expectant, a beast presenting a gift. "Thank you," I managed, forcing a smile. "But I think I'll find us something else." I sold my blanket to a rag-and-bone man for a few coppers, and bought bread and a little meat. Not much, but enough for two. When I got home, I split it fairly. He gulped his down in seconds, then nosed his portion back toward me. "No," I said. "That's yours." He pushed it back. We argued that way for a full 5 minutes before I gave in and took a bite. Only then did he eat again. It was absurd. It was the best I'd felt in years. Chapter 7. 1 week folded into 2, and the days settled into a rhythm. Each morning I cleaned his wounds, which knit slowly but surely. Each evening we shared our thin meal. Each night he slept against me, a warm wall between me and the cold world outside. I gave him a name, Onyx, for the black of his coat and the darkness he had come out of, a darkness I could scarcely imagine. He seemed to take to it. Whenever I said it, his head came up and his eyes kindled. I told him everything, the foundling house where I'd grown up nameless, the long gray years bent over other people's hems, my one dream, a scrap of garden where I might grow herbs and answer to no one. He always listened. Sometimes he laid his head across my knees, and I stroked his fur until my fingers went numb. One evening, with the moon riding full and bright at my window, I finally took off the chain. "It's time," I said quietly. "You're free, Onyx. Go, if that's what you want." The lock gave. The chain fell in a loud, bright clatter that rang through the night. Silence. He stood, shook himself, and I watched relief ripple down the length of him. His neck was raw where the iron had chafed, but it would heal. He went to the door, and my heart sank. Of course. Why would he stay? He was wild. He belonged nowhere near a penniless girl and a smoking hearth. But he turned. He came back. And he lay down in front of the door, not behind it. Blocking the way out, not to flee, but to guard. "You fool," I whispered, wiping my eyes. "You wonderful, mad fool." Chapter 8. It came in the 3rd week. I'd trailed home from another useless day. No one would hire a seamstress who kept a wolf. The rumor had run through the quarter like fire, and I felt the mood turn against me street by street. Onyx was restless that evening, pacing the little room, ears flat, throwing looks at the door and growling low. "What is it?" I set my hand on his head. "What do you smell?" He made no sound, but his eyes said it plainly. Danger. I bolted the door and shoved the crippled table against it. Not much, but something. I lit no candle. We sat in the dark, the wolf and I, and waited. Then I heard them. Boots on the stair. Heavy. More than one man. My pulse thundered in my ears. A hard fist hammered the door and I flinched. "Open up, girl." A rough voice I knew at once. The auctioneer. "We know you're in there." I pressed myself flat to the wall. Onyx set himself between me and the door, lips peeling back off his teeth. "We only want the beast," the voice went on. Turn out we sold him in error, our buyers offering 1,000 gold for him. Hand him over and we'll see you right. Call it 100 for your trouble. 100 gold. More than I would ever see in my whole life. I looked at Onyx, at the proud set of him, at the scars knitting closed under his fur, at the eyes fixed on me with something I could only name as hope. No, I called back, he's mine. Go away. A beat of silence, then a low, ugly laugh. So that's how it is. The door came in with a crash that shook the floor. The table burst apart, wood spinning through the dark. 3 men shouldered through, the auctioneer, a great scarred brute, and a gaunt man with cold, flat eyes, and a weighted net bunched in his fists. There's the animal, the brute roared. Take it! Onyx hit them like a storm-made flesh. I had never seen him fight, never known what lived inside him. Now I knew. He was all teeth and claws, and a snarl so loud it hurt my ears. His jaws closed on the brute's arm, and the scream that tore out of the man will echo in my worst nights forever. But there were too many. The gaunt one flung the net. It fouled Onyx's hind legs and he stumbled, went down. No! I threw myself at the auctioneer without a thought, nails raking his face. He backhanded me so hard my skull cracked against the wall and the world flashed white. Blood filled my mouth. Stupid little sparrow, he spat, seizing a fistful of my hair. You should have taken the coin. His fist drew back. I saw it coming and could not move fast enough. And then Onyx roared, but it was no animal's roar anymore. It came out deeper, vast, packed with an ancient power that raised every hair on my body. Chapter 9. The net simply tore, as if it had been spun of cobweb. Then he began to change. His body blazed, a gold light so fierce I had to shield my eyes. The air crackled, and a pressure built until my ears popped, and the men were screaming. The auctioneer dropped me and reeled backward. The light swelled, then burst. When it faded, the wolf was gone. A man stood in his place. He was staggering, breathtaking, near 7 feet of him, shoulders broad, a body that seemed to thrum with barely leashed power. Midnight hair fell wild to his shoulders. His face was all hard angles, high cheekbones, and a blade of a jaw. And his eyes, the same impossible gold I had come to know in the dark. Onyx, and yet something far greater than onyx. He wore nothing, and it clearly did not trouble him. The same scars I'd tended crossed his skin, the lashings, the brands, the deep cuts. But now, in the shape of a man, I saw the rest of it. Runes, intricate and cruel, worked into his flesh and glowing faintly. A curse. I understood all at once. This had been a curse. You, the auctioneer stammered, face gone the color of ash. No, it can't be. The king is dead. They said the king was dead. King. The word dropped through me like a stone down a well. The man did not turn to me. His whole burning attention was fixed on the intruders, and what lived in his face turned my blood to ice water, murderous, absolute rage. You dare! His voice came deep and resonant, ringing with an authority the little room could hardly hold. Break into my sanctuary. Lay hands on her. My king, we didn't know. The gaunt man crumpled to his knees. Silence. A single word, and it cracked like thunder. The runes on his skin flared, and the very air trembled. She is under my protection. He still did not look at me. He only pointed. She freed me when every other soul had thrown me away. She fed me. She healed me. She gave me back my dignity. He took 1 step toward them, muscle coiling like a great cat gathering to spring. And you come here. You strike her. You make her bleed. His hand shot out faster than sight. He caught the auctioneer by the throat and lifted him clear off the boards with 1 arm. No one. His grip tightened, and I heard something creak. Touches her. Please, the man wheezed. Mercy. For an endless breath I was certain he would kill him, and part of me thought he'd earned it. These men had hunted him, sold him, tortured him, and struck me down. But my own voice came out then, thin and shaking. Please, not here, not in my home. His hand went still. Slowly, so slowly, he turned his head to me. Our eyes met, and I saw the whole of it. The fury, the pain, the gratitude, and under all of it, something that reached straight into my chest. He let the man drop. The auctioneer folded to the floor, coughing blood. "Go," the king said, and quiet as it was worse than any shout. "Go, before I change my mind, and tell every soul in this city, whoever harms a hair on her head will answer to a king." They fell over one another in their scramble for the stair. Their boots clattered away into the night, and then they were gone. Chapter 10. Silence rushed back in. I stood trembling, one hand braced on the wall to keep upright, my head throbbing where I'd hit it, my split lips still bleeding. He turned to me, and the rage drained out of his eyes, replaced by something far gentler. "You're bleeding," he said low. "It's nothing." He came closer, each step slow and careful, as if I were a wild thing he feared to startle. When he stood before me, he lifted his hand, the same hand that had nearly crushed a man's throat, and touched my cheek with a tenderness that undid me. "You saved me," he whispered, his voice fracturing. "You, a poor girl with no name, and no gold. You gave up everything you had for me." A sad smile ghosted across his mouth. "Do you know who I am?" I shook my head. "Kalen, king of the northern reaches, or I was." His hand fell away. "My own council betrayed me. They used forbidden magic to lock me into that shape, a proud king made a beast. They meant to watch me die in the fighting pits for sport. The scars," I breathed. "Each one, a keepsake of their cruelty." He nodded. "But I'm free of it now. The curse is broken. By you." His eyes held mine. "Only true, unselfish devotion could break it. Not romance, though," he hesitated. "That could grow in time. Something truer than that. You saw me. Not the monster. Not the king. Just me." Tears burned down my cheeks. "What happens now?" "Now?" The gentleness hardened into something edged. "Now I take back what is mine. And the traitors will pay for every scar." Then he sank to one knee before me, a king kneeling on my splintered floor. "But first," he said, "I thank you, Elowen. How do you know my name? I never told you. You told it to me in your stories. I always listened." My heart clenched hard. "I only did what was right. And that," he took my hand, "is exactly why. You are the one true thing in a kingdom built on lies." Chapter 11. The hours after ran together like water. Kalen would not leave my side. He found clothing somewhere, I did not ask, and led me out of my ruined chamber into the still, dark city. I felt eyes on us the whole way, shutters cracking open and easing closed. At the city gates, men were already waiting. Soldiers in the royal colors appeared as if conjured out of the night. "My king." They dropped to their knees. "You live." "I live," Kalen said, and his voice rang firm. "Thanks to this woman. She is to be treated with the honor due a queen. Is that understood?" "Yes, my king." A horse was brought. He lifted me up as if I weighed nothing, then swung up behind me, his arms coming around me strong and warm. "Hold on," he murmured against my ear. And we rode out through the night, through black forests and over silvered fields, the moon lighting our road in a dark tide of loyal steel following at our backs. Dawn was breaking when the castle rose before us, vast, its towers stabbing the pale sky, its iron gates swinging wide as though they had only ever been waiting for him. Servants scattered before us, faces caught between terror and joy. The king has come home. Kalen dismounted and lifted me down. My knees buckled, and he steadied me. "Welcome," he said softly, "to your new home." "My home? You didn't imagine I'd let you go?" His smile came crooked. "You gave your last coppers for me. In return, I give you a kingdom. But I'm only a seamstress. No. He shook his head. You are the woman who saved a king, my protector, my savior. And if you'll have it, he faltered, and for the first time I saw uncertainty cross that fierce face. My queen. The whole world seemed to hold still. I know it's too soon, he pressed on quickly. I ask nothing of you. Only stay, safe, protected, and in time, perhaps, we'll see what we might become. I looked at him, this man who had been a wolf, this king who had slept on my floor, this warrior holding out his heart with unsteady hands. I'll stay, I whispered, but not for the castle, not for the crown. Why then? I smiled, a real one, the first in days. Because you're still the same. Wolf or king, you're still my onyx. His eyes kindled, and then gently, as though I might shatter, he bent his head and touched his brow to mine. Then I am yours, he whispered. Today, and always. Epilogue. 1 year later. The traitors were rooted out. Kalen was terrible in his justice, but he was not only terrible, he was fair. The corrupt paid dearly, the innocent were spared and lifted up, and I became what no one at that bone market could have wagered on, his constant companion, his counsel, his friend. It took months for what lay between us to deepen from friendship into something more, but when it turned like the seasons, natural, unhurried, and right. On the anniversary of the day I bought a chained wolf at the Market of the Damned, he knelt before me once more. This time he held a ring, a plain gold band set with a single black stone. For the woman, he said, who gave everything. His voice held steady, but his hand did not. Will you be my queen? Not out of debt. Out of love. Yes, I said. The wedding was small and quiet, exactly as we both wanted. No grand speeches, no groaning feast. Only the two of us beneath an open sky, a handful of loyal friends around us. When he kissed me, I could have sworn I heard a wolf howl somewhere off in the moonlit hills. Sometimes still, on the coldest nights, the change comes over him. The curse is weakened, not wholly gone. But I have never once minded, because when he is a wolf, he sleeps beside my bed just as he did in that freezing little room. He guards me still. He loves me still. And I love him in every shape he wears, because he taught me that love was never in a crown or a title, but in the small things, in trust, in sacrifice, in seeing what the whole world walks past. I spent my last coin on a chained wolf to save him. I never knew I was freeing the Alpha King, and in the end, it was never really him I saved. It was me. She was wolfless and nameless, and told her whole life she was nothing. But she looked into a cage everyone else walked past, and she saw a soul worth the last of everything she had. Sometimes the thing the world calls a monster is only a king waiting for one honest heart to set him free. And sometimes the person who saves you is the one you were quietly saving all along.